On this episode of the Star Trek Universe podcast, we are going to take a little trip back to Talos IV with our Discovery 208, if memory serves, review. Right after this.
Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
Hey, Dave. How you doing, buddy?
I'm tired and I might be getting sick. I don't know. My throat is a little weird.
That's no good, man. I'm tired too, but I am mostly tired from a extremely busy weekend. Last night was a friend of mine's birthday, and so I asked her what she wanted to do for her birthday. And she said she wanted to go like really party hard. And I was like, all right, we're going to do that. And we went out last night and like went dancing and drinking and just had ourselves a good old time. And, it was a blast, but I did that. And then I didn't realize it was the spring forward, you know? And so I stayed out way too late dancing and drinking and running around and eating ice cream and yeah. And then it sprung forward. So I looked at my clock when I got home and it was like 4:30 in the morning. It's like, what is happening?
Yeah. I sprung in my youth. I don't sprung anymore or spring anymore.
I'll never stop springing. Okay. Let's talk Star Trek.
All right.
Give us that sweet summary, my man.
The CBS All Access summary. Spock and Burnham head to Talos IV where the process of healing Spock forces the siblings to confront their troubled past. Stamets desperately tries to reconnect with an increasingly disconnected Hugh, while Tyler struggles to shed the crew's suspicions of him due to his past as a Voke.
Yeah, all that happened. That checks out.
It did. Right up front, awesome previously on Star Trek segment.
I'm glad you liked it. I was a little worried you wouldn't, and I thought it was beautiful. Previously on Star Trek and actually showing clips from the original series. That was super cool. And that kind of thing, you know, I've never seen them do something like that. And I just thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I loved all of the cool transitions. I loved the smash cut from classic Jeffrey Hunter Pike to Anson Mount.
Yeah.
I dug all of that. It didn't hurt that earlier today I watched The Cage again.
Oh, nice. I've recently seen it. I saw it a couple months ago, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. I was glad that I had also seen it recently. Yeah.
I love that they, you know, gave it enough of an homage to do that awesome, you know, previously on. But I wish, like, the Talosians looked more like the Talosians in the original series. I wish they'd kind of kept more of the aesthetic, you know, maybe even gotten some older ladies to portray the Talosians, because they were pretty frail in The Cage. Not really so here. They were like Andre the Giant over here. But, you know, whatever.
Yeah, the look didn't bother me, but we've discussed that many times. The aesthetics often don't. They looked similar enough to me. They just looked like updated special effects, and that's fine with me. But yeah, the thing that it was interesting the way they expanded their powers in this episode.
You think they expanded their powers?
Yeah, I mean, being able to reach across space like that to give the illusion, like it seemed to me watching The Cage that they were like giving an illusion in a specific place where they were. Being able to reach across space, and not only that, but being able to do that illusion black hole all over their around their planet. All of that just was an expansion of their powers for sure. Not that it conflicts, but it's an expansion.
The black hole illusion, not necessarily the black hole, but the ability to do that was set forth in the Cage, that they could just make you believe whatever you're seeing is real. But them being able to reach across space was actually a thing that started in the Menagerie.
Oh, okay.
Because Commodore Mendez or Admiral Mendez or whatever he was. I don't really remember anymore, but it was Mendez. And like pretty much everything that they were going through in the menagerie was untrue. Like, it was all an illusion.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to rewatch the menagerie. It's been a long time. But at the end of the menagerie, weren't they there, though? At
the end of the menagerie, they wound up taking Pike and back to Talos IV. And they used the footage of Vina walking. Yeah, they used the footage from the cage of Vina going back inside with the fake Pike that they referenced in this episode. Because she says she lived an entire lifetime with this fake Pike.
Yeah.
They used the footage that from the end of the cage where they create a fake Pike for her, as the real Pike going in, and we see, Kirk and crew watching that on the view screen.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe that reaching across space with those illusion powers was previously mentioned. I guess I thought it was more localized than that in the original series. But again, I've seen the cage recently. I haven't seen the menagerie in a while. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty cool episode. I liked all the stuff with, Stamets and Hugh a lot. It was really sad.
Yeah, I don't understand why there's not a therapist on the ship. And why both of them don't have one.
I think I would guess there probably is.
Prove it.
I mean, yeah, no, obviously we haven't seen one.
Yeah.
But he's been back a very limited amount of time. We just don't know that, and he's just realizing he's going through all of this. I would assume that, if there is one, we'll be seeing him or her soon.
I feel like something like this, they should have, like, Stamets should have already had a grief counselor. You know what I mean?
Well, I wouldn't, maybe, well, first of all, we don't know that he didn't.
We don't, but he is acting a bit selfishly.
I mean, sure. But just because people have counselors doesn't mean they're not going to do shitty things.
I know. It's just, part of it feels so half-hearted.
I don't know if I'd call it selfish. I think he even says to Hugh that he's just trying to, he's trying to celebrate this for what it is, a miracle, He's trying to, he just wants everything to be okay. And I think not just for himself, but for Hugh as well. He just wants everything to be okay. He wants this to only be good, And, he's realizing that there's a downside. And then I was jumped to one of my quotes, but man, it broke my heart when he said, "Why are you so angry with me?"
Yeah, me too.
That confused, just why are you so angry with me? Like, and Hugh says, "That's a great question," and just walks out. It's just so, the love that Stamets has for Hugh is so simple and so clear and so decided. And everything with Hugh is so up in the air right now that it's just, they're having a hard time connecting, and it really was painful to watch.
And it seems like, based on little comments that Hugh made, that he had a real problem with Stamets suddenly being so attentive, because while he was okay in their normal relationship, Stamets was never there. He spent, all of his time in his lab. And now when Culber actually needs time to process things and figure things out, like, Stamets is up his ass.
Yeah.
Like,
I'd say that's part of it. I think he just realizes that I think the attentiveness and the making of the meal, I like how they call it, what do they call it? Putting together dinner, because you don't really cook in this universe, unless you're Cisco. The putting together of dinner was just a reminder that things are not normal.
Yeah.
For him. While Stamets is refusing to admit that things aren't normal. That this isn't normal, this entire scenario. And, I'm giving, all my quotes now, I guess. But, he also says, my senses, my feelings don't connect with it or anything really, talking about the food. And it was just so obvious that he meant, I'm not connecting with you. Mm-hmm. Oh, just that whole scene broke my heart really was wonderful.
It's kind of rough watching their relationship at this point, honestly.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's the point. This episode was very much meant to be, hard. And I liked it. I liked that it's hard. I'm a big fan of making me feel anything. That's what TV's for in my mind. Making me feel and making me think. And, this episode did both.
Yeah. It's like a narcotic.
I think generally narcotics are to not feel and not think.
Well, you just kind of start living other people's lives and you stop building and traveling and, sorry, I'm just quoting The Cage now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And by the way, we did not get why Talos IV has a death penalty on it.
No, we didn't.
They very specifically seemed to leave that out. They kept saying it's restricted. It was almost like they wanted us to forget that in the original series they said it carried the weight of death. Right.
That was from the menagerie, but yeah, General Order 7, they said there's disciplinary action involved, but there's some conjecture among fandom that perhaps the death penalty is not like a real threat, like is only there to keep people out of that star system because of how dangerous it actually is.
Yeah.
But, yeah, they didn't say here.
No, I think they were trying to leave that out. It seemed like they were deliberately not mentioning the death penalty issue.
Mm-hmm. They sure are.
Yeah. Kind of annoying, but that's fine. And then again, it's like nothing's conflicting. It just, they're just leaving certain things out, which is better than conflicting. They've learned their lesson about some of that conflicting.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, and that's the thing. If you don't want to touch on something you don't like, you don't have to just come out and change it. You just don't have to touch on it. Just leave it out. That's fine.
I don't know. I'm not sure I like that either, but yeah.
I mean, it's better. It's better than just straight up doing something different that doesn't match, doesn't line up.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of the big reveal of what Burnham did to Spock?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty predictable.
Right. I found it annoying that it was a mystery because it was really tame.
Mm-hmm.
They made it out to be a big mystery. Like not only did they mention episodes before, I did something to him that was just unforgivable, but then also they waited till the end of this episode. Like they had a whole thing where I would have the structure of this episode is like leading us to that reveal. And I would have much more important reveal to me is what the Red Angel has going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they front loaded that. That was like the first thing they talked about. And they're like, and now we get to the important thing that Burnham was mean to Spock once.
Yeah. I don't, part of me is like, oh, she called him a name that when I was growing up in my house, that was like Tuesday.
Right.
What the hell? Who cares? But then again, you look at how, reviled Spock was in his own culture. To have his own sister call him a half-breed and say, you don't get it, I don't want you in my life.
Right. Well,
that's messed up.
It is. It's absolutely messed up.
But again, it's children.
Right. It's children. But I think what she probably regrets, and the reason it's a big deal, and I get it, it is a big deal. I think that it's because it put him on a path to sort of revile his humanity. And he was on a path to understanding it. And she was talking about how they were going to go to Earth together and all this stuff. And then he's embracing both sides of himself. And then his only tether to that world is cut off and tells him that he's just a half-breed. Like, I get it. It is an emotional moment, but it's not a mystery. Like, I did not need to think about what she did to him for 6 weeks or whatever.
Well, you didn't, but Burnham has been thinking about this ever since that day, all those years ago. So her extreme shame in not wanting to tell her parents makes sense. All of that makes sense to me in a way. But also, it's not Spock's only tether. His mother is human.
Sure.
But I'm not sure how to feel about it because, like I said, in one way it's like, yeah, you were kids, but then again, you were kids. You're going to get scarred. And, I don't know. It's interesting.
I don't have a problem at all with with what happened and what she did and the emotional complexity that brings. I only have a problem with the fact that they treated it like a mystery. It just made it they made it seem like it was going to be a much bigger, hairier deal than it ended up being. It is still a big moment, and they could have even had that character moment, I feel like, without teasing it for 6 weeks and making me think it was going to be she did something unforgivable. It feels like a false. I just don't like false mysteries.
I can't help but wonder if there was a different thing that she was going to do because they lost their showrunners.
Right, that's possible.
Yeah, I can't help but wonder if the original or the previous showrunners didn't have something else in mind.
Yeah, absolutely possible.
What did you think of the Red Angel being human?
I still think it's probably Burnham.
I don't anymore.
And apparently he calls her a she at some point.
Yeah, I still don't. If it's going to be Michael Burnham, I don't think it would be.
Right.
Because the angel came to Spock and said, hey, let me show you Michael Burnham's death. And she died in the forge.
That's true. That's true. So depending on how time travel works, that might not make sense. Depending on how time travel works and whether this, Spock from, our prime timeline came over to this timeline, even though that Spock doesn't exist in the Kelvin timeline. It's a different Spock. Like, it's possible that she's a time traveler from a previous incarnation of reality or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's still possible it's Burnham. I'm not really making that call. I don't think that it has to be Burnham by any means, but I still think that's a pretty fun thing. So it's clear, that Arium, is that her name?
Yeah.
Arium is falsifying Ash Tyler's codes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. I like the subterfuge that's going on, and I like that Ash Tyler's being treated poorly. The fight between Hugh and Ash Tyler was intense, and as soon as it happened, and Saru was like, we have to let this play out, I was like, WTF, what are you doing? Like, no, you don't have to let this play out. Talking about needing a psychologist on the ship, like, Saru was acting like he had all knowledge about these relationships and what they needed.
Oh, yeah, and I loved that. I'm calling him Savage Saru.
I thought it was dumb until they called it out in the next scene. And
Pike was, before your little evolution, you wouldn't have made that choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. That was great. But yeah, he does need a shrink. Absolutely.
Oh, I was very relieved in this episode by one major thing.
Okay.
I've been seeing on the trailers for weeks, Burnham saying, say hello, Spock, and then Spock saying, hello, Spock.
Goodbye, Spock. Yeah.
Is it goodbye, Spock?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I have been dreading that moment because I thought it was going to be them, and I thought that is not Spock at all. That's like a weird patter joke from like vaudeville. Like, I don't need Spock to be a vaudeville comedian or whatever. Like,
it's from Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, but yeah.
All right. Is that the first time it was ever used? I thought it was older than that.
It is apparently commonly attributed to Burns and Allen, and they never said that on the show, but it was from Laugh-In.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
I just thought it was an older joke that might have been used on Laugh-In, but was older than that. But anyway, I was just like, I don't need that from Spock. Don't need it at all. It really was going to annoy me, but then it ended up being perfect in the episode because it was the Talosians.
Yeah, it's the Talosians. I still hated it.
I didn't hate it at all. It was just the Talosians screwing with them. Like, that's fine. That does not mess with the character of Spock at all.
Yeah, I just hate that joke. I don't care who says it.
Right. I didn't love the joke. I didn't think it was hilarious, but I thought the fact that the Talosians were teasing Section 31 was good. And fine. Like I don't know why they chose to put that in the trailer. I honestly don't. I think that's the worst choice. I've been dreading it for weeks.
Historically, they don't know how to promote Star Trek.
Sure.
They just don't. They're like, oh, well, the general audience is going to think that Star Trek is this cerebral, boring thing, so we'll throw in some humor. And it's always like hackneyed humor. It's like, they had like one really good comedy movie, that being Star Trek 4, and then they were like, well, that's what the general audience likes. And they like just try to shove in as much humor as they can into Star Trek 5, and it fell flat a lot. So, I mean, that's what it felt like here. Like, the goodbye Spock moment felt like, Spock preparing to roast a marshmallow.
Right.
As he puts it.
It didn't bother me, in the context. Cause at that point we knew what was going on.
Yeah. I don't mind. Yeah, I'm glad that it wasn't actually Spock.
Right.
I still hate the joke.
Sure. You can hate the joke all day, but I was just annoyed because I thought they were trying to have Spock say it. Anyway.
I liked that Burnham touched the blue singing plant and smiled just like Spock did in the cage.
Yeah, I did too. That was fun. I liked when Pike finally gets to see Spock again, and he says, "Is that a smile on your face?" And then he's like, "Perhaps it is." That felt very much like old Spock to me. That felt right. And then I also liked in that exact moment, Burnham does the biggest eyebrow raise I've seen out of her yet. And it was just, they're brother and sister. I don't know. It just felt like they were brother and sister in that moment. It was nice.
Yeah. Do you think that the original series happened because Burnham was dead? Do you think in the original series Burnham was dead? That she died in the Forge?
Like, they're saying we're in the prime timeline.
So they're claiming, but we all know this horse shit.
Well, it could be. I like it as a theory. The only issue with it is, in my mind, is, and this may be exactly what they're doing, I kind of don't see them losing Burnham this season. Yeah. And with all this Red Angel time travel stuff, this would be the time to give that a reveal, have that reveal happen. And then maybe bring everything into line with canon by changing everything, having the Red Angel change everything. But I don't see them doing that just yet. But so as I guess as of now, I don't think that's the case. But it is a very interesting theory.
Like the producers keep trying to be like, oh, well, this is why Spock never mentions Michael Burnham is because of, purportedly what she said to him when they were kids. And maybe that's not it. Maybe that's not why. Maybe there's something deeper. Like she's part of an alternate version of the prime timeline or something.
Sure. But, you've said it over and over. He also never mentioned Sybok.
He never mentioned
Sybok. Until he shows up, Yeah. He
never mentioned that Sarek was his father until Sarek and Amanda show up on Journey to Babel or Babel, however you say that.
Right. And we don't know much about anyone's family. Like they occasionally mention their family on the show, but it is very rare. It's not like we would have to know about everyone's family members. I think there's nothing wrong with him having an extra sister.
Right. Spock doesn't bring shit up. He just doesn't.
Right.
That is canon. Absolutely. I don't know. I think it would be interesting if they did something with, even if they kept Michael Burnham in the show, but had the Red Angel go back and change it to where her parents. Because Leland's tied into this too. Leland killed her parents. There's got to be a reason that they're bringing that in. And they have Leland involved. So if they wind up going back and redoing that or undoing that, Michael Burnham could even somehow, by some science fiction reasoning, remember everything and wind up on the show in an altered timeline that is the original series timeline.
Sure. Absolutely.
I don't think they're going to do that.
You could have future Red Angel version of Burnham, having gone through way more than everyone else has gone through, suddenly show up and no one remember her. A la Fringe season 4 or 6 or whatever it was when that guy showed up and no one remembered him.
That was season 4.
So I thought.
Honey, that show didn't last to season 6.
Yeah, for some reason, I was thinking 4 was the last one, but then I was like, that seems too short. That show feels longer than 4 seasons.
Yeah, it went 5.
Okay, gotcha.
I thought Anson Mount was great in this episode. He really did. I felt like he really channeled Jeffrey Hunter in a lot of places, but still like managed to keep his version of Pike consistent. Like,
sure.
It was just like, I felt like it felt like the circumstances of the episode was like bringing back like memories and whatnot, and him just kind of becoming, no pun intended, more cagey.
Well, no, I really liked all the stuff with him and Vina. Is her name correct?
Yeah, that's Vina.
I really enjoyed all the stuff with Vina. And just generally, Pike is my favorite part of this show right now.
Yeah, and one of the fun things, going back and looking at the cage, was the Talosians punish him by basically giving him the illusion that he's in hell. Mm. And when they bring him out of it, the Talosian says, a myth you once heard in your childhood, which ties into Pike and his faith. His faith.
Yeah, that's cool. That's real cool.
I see what you did there, Discovery writers. And I like it.
Oh, yeah. I dug it. I think it's a good episode. Any other tidbits about the Red Angel we learned this week? I mean, the biggest deal is that she's coming back to try to stop the destruction of all sentient life. That's, I guess,
yeah. What was that?
What do you mean?
Like, there were like starships, right? Some sort of starship shooting missiles?
It looked like some sort of turrets, maybe, like space-based. And it looks like similar technology to the squid we saw last episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, it seems to me that there's some sort of someone else in the future is sending back stuff to try to destroy sentient life, and the Red Angel is coming back to try to save sentient life for whatever reason. Trying to figure it out.
I don't know. It was dope, though.
Yeah, it was dope. It looked cool. It looked exciting. And, this is the stuff I was talking about in the first episode. In the very first episode, I didn't like this season yet because I didn't feel the stakes. Like, the red signals in the sky didn't mean anything to me. And it's taken it a while. What is this, episode 7?
8, I think.
Okay. Well, now we're like halfway through the season and I finally see the stakes of the thing. And that's good. I'm excited to finally have like, okay, we know what the stakes are. We know what we're fighting for. We know, like, we still don't know who the players are and why they're doing what they're doing, but we know what we're trying to prevent.
Yeah.
So that's cool. You want to get to, quotes?
Sure. I'm good with quotes.
You go first. I've already used most of mine.
Is there a valuable question in your arsenal? Yes. Do you actually think the beard is working?
I like that a lot. Yeah. I never thought I'd ask this of anyone, but I need you to take this on faith. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty good. By the way, I did mean to bring this up. I'm digging Ethan as Spock.
Yeah, me too.
He's not Nimoy. But he's doing a damn good job, and especially when you look back at like old Spock, when you look back at like Nimoy in the cage, and Where No Man Has Gone Before, I can see it.
Yeah, me too. I'm honestly fully on board, and they've really slowly lowered us into him as Spock with all these previous episodes where we're seeing crazy Spock, then silent Spock, then catatonic Spock, and then finally like he speaks. This is really the first episode we've gotten normal Spock, and oh, that's the other thing I was going to say. Talked about things that the Talosians, expansions of their powers. Obviously, the illusory powers that they have been used like that in the past. But the other thing is fixing Spock. I thought that was strange. I didn't realize they had the ability to fix people, but they're powerful telepaths, I guess.
Yeah, I don't see any reason they couldn't.
No, there's no reason they couldn't. But it is an expansion, I felt like. And
I did love how like rapey they are. Because they were in the original series too. They were in the cage and the menagerie. Like Like, it was like, oh yeah, we'll fix him, but we must have a memory of your pain.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you creeps. Like, oh, we have to experience something. Like,
I don't call it rapey, but it was definitely transactional. It was definitely, it's a weird, they're weird.
Well, they're if you don't want to say rapey, then voyeuristic at the very least.
And
like
they did say, I guess mind rapey, because they did say immediately after, Vina said, you don't want them to take payment by force. It's not pleasant.
Yeah, they're not big on consent, it seems like. And
right.
Like when you look back at the cage, they're like watching from their little monitors, like hoping that Pike and Vina couple and they can experience it psychically through them. It's like, you guys are freaks.
They're freaks for sure.
That's awful. Like, this show was like, they made this thing in 1964 and it's just, still creepy. Still creepy.
Oh yeah, it's creepy.
I loved when Tyler was explaining to Pike that he was in love with Michael Burnham, and he says she was not entirely disinterested in me. I enjoyed that.
Oh, that's great.
Culber and Tyler. And Culber says, I don't even know who I am anymore. And Tyler says, who do you think you're talking to?
Oh, yeah. That
was awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
I laughed probably harder than I should have when Georgiou explained that in the mirror universe, the Talosians tried their illusion tricks on her and she blew them and their stupid singing plants off of the face of the planet.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, and I did laugh when Saru was like, the Starfleet manual offers no regulatory guidelines for interactions between humans with Klingons grafted to their bones and a ship's doctor returned from the dead.
Yeah, that's really great.
Those things made me laugh.
Those are great. Good quotes. Good quotes this week.
I didn't write down the quotes, but the scene, I really love the scene where they were showing what Michael did to Spock, and they were switching up the actors from the childhood actors to the adult actors.
Yeah, it was nice.
That was really powerful and well done. I liked it.
Yeah.
It made the very mundane thing or occurrence of children being hateful to each other, or at least one child being hateful to the other, that shouldn't have caused probably as much scarring as it did, seem way more dramatic, and I actually kind of bought it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I completely buy it from a character perspective. I do. And it really does seem like it drove, Spock into himself. And he says he chose to, focus on logic instead of trying to embrace his humanity, which is kind of where he ends up, obviously partially human all along, but, through the original series, it kind of explains where he ends up.
Yeah.
I dig it. You got any trivia?
I do. Sarah Middich, who played Ariam in season 1, was in this episode as a human character named Lieutenant Nielsen.
Huh.
Which is,
I guess they replaced the Ariam actress.
They did.
Interesting.
They did. And Section 31 in this episode, they have an artificial intelligence called Control.
Yeah.
And that was from a David Mack novel, Star Trek Section 31 Control. So
cool.
Right?
That is very cool.
Let's see. This was a thing that kind of annoyed me when they saw the black hole and then Spock steered him into it and it became Talos IV. And Michael says, we're really on the other side of the looking glass now. And that was obviously a reference to Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Another reference to that. And I'm kind of like, can we stop doing that now? Because we've done that a lot.
We get it.
This season.
She read in that book. It's like extrapolating that, one line from the original series and making it making it a thing.
Right.
Really milking it.
It was neat. A few things for, a couple, for us, yay, you're bringing up the animated series. And then it's like, oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
Every episode? Okay.
Since the first one. No, since the third one.
Yeah. I did like that they had Michael run away to Vulcan's Forge. That was first seen in Yesteryear, and they also did it in Enterprise. So that's like a dangerous terrain on Vulcan.
That's cool.
They said that Starbase 11 is 2 light years from Talos 4, and Starbase 11 is where Spock picked up Pike to take him to Talos 4 in the Menagerie.
Huh.
And it was also the setting for the original series Court Martial.
Which is what they're going to have to go through next episode, apparently. Or what they were supposed to go through, but they escaped.
Yeah.
We run.
So
cool, man.
I don't know. I'm enjoying it for what it is.
I'm totally on board. So after I watched the episode tonight, I watched a theory video, which, I try to steer clear of normally, but it was a guy makes a show. He lives here in Birmingham, which I think is kind of cool. There's a show called Trexpertise on YouTube where he just digs into Trek. Do you want to talk about his theory some?
Sure.
Spoiler alert, because I think it's a pretty good theory.
Okay.
And I don't want to spoil if you don't want to know.
He's not one of these, I've heard you talk about him. He's not one of these, angry gatekeeping Star Trek fans who keep conjecting that the show is canceled, right?
No, not at all.
Okay, good. Cause it has been renewed for a season 3.
No, he's been, you're so scarred, Dave. You're like, he's a YouTuber. Wait, he's not a gatekeeper, is he? We're all gatekeepers in our own way. We all have our own opinions, but no, this guy is, pretty thoughtful, generally about Star Trek, and he seems to be pretty, open-minded about Discovery. He just did his Discovery mid-season review, which is the video I'm referencing. And he, in that video, he is referencing other people that are talking about it and theorizing. So, spoiler alert, but I think this is a really solid theory.
Okay.
That whatever this race in the future, whatever this, being in the future that is sending back, it seems to be mechanical in nature. It is control.
Oh, well, that seems obvious now.
Right? It seems really obvious now. The reason I didn't catch it is because I didn't catch that they even talked about it this episode. Not that I immediately would have made the connection, but that's a really solid theory, I think, that we're going to go forward this season. Section 31 is going to continue to do its thing. And apparently they're theorizing that control from the future is talking to Arium, controlling Arium now, and it's also controlling the current day control. And it is actually controlling Section 31 as its AI leadership, basically. And so this entire battle that's happening, kind of Burnham and Pike and the crew are now sort of being conscripted into whatever this war is by the Red Angel, and Section 31 is actively being conscripted by control from the future. And he mentioned something about, it seems like a thing that a movie would do where it would we've been created to protect Starfleet, but Starfleet is the enemy of Starfleet. We must destroy all of Starfleet. And then it's destroying all sentient life to bring peace to the universe. That's sort of a thing. Its root. It wants to bring safety to the universe, and it's realized the only way to do it is destroy all sentient life or something. Something of that nature. Kind of basically Terminator in the Star Trek universe. And Section 31 is like Skynet, sort of.
I can see that.
I totally can see that. I think it's a good theory.
That's probably a pretty good theory. Yeah.
Right? And the fact that they mention control, but they don't make a thing of it, makes me think that they're trying to put it out there without making it too obvious.
They're burying the lead.
Yeah. But after they might mention control a couple more times, and then you're start putting it a little more in front of us. Yeah, I thought that was a really solid theory.
As soon as you said it, I went, son of a bitch, that's it.
Yeah. It seems right. That's why I wanted to do a spoiler alert, because I really hate when people talk theories that seem really right. Last season, I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but last season I pulled up a Star Trek Discovery podcast. First time I'd listened to a Star Trek Discovery podcast since I'd been watching the show. I normally like to listen to podcasts of shows I like, of fans talking. And literally in the first minute of the podcast, he said, without a spoiler alert, he just said, well, we all know that Lorca is from the mirror timeline and that Ash Tyler is actually Vogue. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I didn't know any of that. Because I haven't been following the online discussions and hadn't caught the subtle, whatevers. And it really pissed me off. So, anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That sucks, man.
I think that's a solid theory, though. I think we might have a Skynet / Matrix thing happening.
And Control started the Borg.
Yeah, that totally could be. Except
I don't know.
yeah, no. I think the Borg, I kind of like the idea of it being like 27th century Borg, but I don't know. I almost feel like it's too easy to go Borg or too obvious.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't actually want them to go Borg.
But, once you go Borg, you never
stop going Borg because the writers from the 90s and early 2000s relied way too heavily on them.
Yeah. But they were so cool. Until Voyager. There's a whole, I want to say, there's a whole YouTube video on when did the Borg go wrong. I want to actually say it might be a Trexpertise video. It might be someone else though. They're like talking about when did the Borg stop being threatening was the
I don't
question.
think it was him. I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was somebody else. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
It was the guy with the beard and the ball cap. I can't remember his name.
It was good though. It's a good video.
Yeah. That dude makes, there are a bunch of Star Trek YouTubers I watch that are really good. And then there are those that have cropped up a lot recently where it's like the girl you were talking about who's just like crying because Discovery did a thing she didn't like or something.
Right.
Like,
really,
Manson
really
Mount spilled the beans. He said Discovery's canceled because he's looking for a job. And I'm like, or he was leaving after that season.
Yeah. Which is what we were assuming anyway. Yeah. Yep. Anyway.
Discovery's been renewed. Season 3.
Season 3 is coming. I'm excited about it.
I am too.
Well, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. We're the Star Trek Universe podcast. We will be back with you, next week. Hopefully closer to the time it airs this week. Maybe we can do it Thursday night. This week, Captain Marvel came out and I went to see that. You just saw that, right?
I did.
We're basically in the post credits right now. You want to talk about Captain Marvel a little bit?
Sure.
Spoiler alert for Captain Marvel in 3, 2, 1. Let's talk about some Captain Marvel. What'd you think?
Yeah. I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah. I liked it. I think it could have been better.
Sure. I think there's always room for improvement.
There were some things like directorially that bothered me. Just like choices I would have made differently. That came across as a little lazy to me, but overall, I really liked it.
Yeah, I don't think I noticed anything. Nothing stood out to me as lazy necessarily. Like, I enjoyed everything that I saw, and maybe it was because I wasn't like totally invested. Like, when I see stuff like Star Trek, a lot of times I will like look at it and think of it in a certain way that where I'm like, oh, this should have been different. Captain Marvel, I was not necessarily all that invested in it. Like, I don't read the comics. I remember the character when she was Ms. Marvel. But I remember her way more as like Rogue's coma victim who just never woke up. So, I haven't read any Captain Marvel. I just kind of enjoyed the ride. I
am not precious about it at all. I'm just, the things that bothered me slightly were all like internal to the movie itself. Where I was like, they could have handled that better, or done this better. but not to get, I don't want to get too bogged down in it, because I generally did like it. I just thought it was a good flick, and I liked all the world building they did, moving us towards in-game. And, I'm excited. One thing, an example of something that I found kind of too easy or lazy or whatever you want to say is that she meets the group of Skrulls and realizes there's children and refugees, basically.
Yeah.
And immediately goes, oh, the Kree are just wrong. And I kind of felt like, no, maybe not. Maybe you just met a group of children and refugees. And in the end, she didn't kill her mentor. So I thought that was at least a nice, okay, so maybe she's not full on going to destroy the Kree, and she also found out the Kree lied to her, which also complicates it.
I thought she was pretty heavily in that camp before she saw the refugees. And at that point, she was just like, I didn't know. But even, the main Skrull said, my hands are bloodied too, or whatever it was. That's
exactly it. Yeah. I thought they did a pretty good job walking that line, but I kind of wish there'd just been a little more instead of kind of going, it kind of felt like they were saying, she was like, all right, well, I'm on this side now.
She was.
She was, but I kind of wish there'd been a little more like her predecessor, Marvel. She was not trying to win the war; she was trying to stop the war. Mm-hmm. And by getting this group of refugees away and collecting the Skrulls and sending them to a distant home.
I don't think she was just I'm going to go kill every Kree, or I'm just going to go save every Skrull. I think she was just oh, well, what is the right thing right now?
Right.
This is the right thing right now.
Right. Yeah.
So I think
you're right. I thought the way it was handled was a little bit the nuance is in there, but you have to kind of look for it. You have to really pay attention to get the nuance of what's happening, and instead of I don't know, making it a little more blatant. But we had a similar conversation about some other movie last week, and we had a similar not necessarily disagreement, but a different take on the where I'm I like it not so much to be spelled out. I don't like it to be. I like points to be driven home. You know what I mean? Sometimes
certain points that don't need to be driven home, and that's certainly one of them. I think when you have when you can go into something small like that and go well, what was this character's motivation? I think it's best to leave that not so driven home so that you can go back and look at it multiple times and kind of come to different decisions.
I don't really agree with that. I obviously there's different kinds of movies and there's different directors and different styles. Mm-hmm. But my thing about storytelling is you're not trying to tell the way things actually are. You're trying to tell a version that takes you through an experience. And I love those big moments where you have all the stuff going on and then there's a moment that crystallizes that thought. You know what I mean? And they had that in this for other things, like her owning of herself, her understanding who she was, and it suddenly gives her all the power. And refusing to be gaslit by that guy at the end. I freaking loved that so much. By Yonrog when he's trying to gaslight her and get her to fight him without her powers. I freaking loved that scene.
I think big moments like that is perfectly fine to drive that point home.
Right.
I feel like that's really important. But when you get into the semantics of why a character does certain things, it's best to leave it ambiguous so that it could be more relatable. So it could be more open to interpretation by a wider audience. And I think that's something that Marvel's done really well.
Yeah.
overall.
I think it's possible. It just seems like that's a big part. I guess the Skrull issue is less of an issue, and it's more just that she realized she was being tricked and she wasn't going to be their slave anymore. And I think that's the emotional journey of this movie. So maybe you're right. Maybe that line is being walked fine. I mean, obviously I understood the line, and I brought up that line you brought up about I have blood on my hands too. That's something I brought up when we were talking about it on our podcast, on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I overall I really liked it. And I liked the world building with Fury. Mm-hmm. I liked that the cat took his eye. The Flurkin took his eye.
I did too. I've seen so many people hate that, but I loved it.
Yeah, I loved it. And I loved that, he's a real person that has been, he has to have a reputation as the master spy. So a lot of his, legend is bullshit.
Yeah, but that line from Winter Soldier when he was like, I've seen so many people say, oh, this means that this is a lie. No, absolutely not. That's perfect. That is perfect. That line from Winter Soldier makes it even better. Like, the last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye. Yeah. The last time he trusted someone was when he trusted Goose.
Yeah. See, and I don't know exactly how to take that. Like, that is funny. If that's how you're supposed to take it, that's funny. Mm-hmm. But it's also possible that he just has this legend of how he lost his eye, and that's just something he tells people to try to, increase his,
sure,
whatever,
sure,
increase his cachet.
But they did make a point of mentioning that he trusted the cat in Captain Marvel.
Oh, did he actually say he trusted him?
Yes.
Oh yeah, and I know that like the Skrulls were like, you probably don't want to get close to that cat. Yeah, it's really good. That's like, funny.
I love the cat scratches him and he's like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. He like looks at Ben Mendelsohn and he's like, no.
Yeah. The Skrulls were hilarious. I did not expect the Skrulls to be as funny as they were.
Yeah, they were good.
And I really loved, my favorite moment in the whole movie was when they were trying to extract her memories. Mm-hmm. And one of the Skrulls says, this is really confusing. And like I think that was meta commentary on the non-linear form of the movie had taken. Mm-hmm. I really, really loved it. It's all jumbled in here. This is really confusing. I can just imagine people watching and being like, it is.
Yeah, that was good.
Liked it.
I loved the soundtrack. The soundtrack was just like this. I saw, a few people complaining about how, like, we get it. It's in the 90s. We don't need a 90s song transitioning everything. Man, I loved it. I loved it so much. Like,
I liked it. There were a few things I thought they could have done better. I think every song in the movie was female except for Come As You Are.
Maybe, yeah.
And I'm not totally certain about that, but we were going over in our heads on our cast, and I really wish they just stuck to all female, because that's a kind of a cool theme, like female anthemic rock songs. But I guess you could say the only time they do use a male singer is when they're going back to, when they're going inside the Matrix, as it were, to talk to the Supreme Intelligence in one of those last scenes. And I think that part is representing the control of the Supreme Intelligence over her. And so maybe that Kurt Cobain moment is, representing sort of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
But I was kind of like, why'd you use one male song? I may be wrong. There might have been a couple more, but I didn't notice any. I think for the most part it was all female 90s.
I think it was all female 90s, but I don't think there was a song in that movie that I hadn't listened to in the past week without realizing that it was in Captain Marvel.
Oh, that's funny. One of my biggest missed opportunities for that movie is there's a really great scene when she finally gets powered up. And I'm Just a Girl comes on.
Yes.
Love that song. Like the scene. Mm-hmm. But if James Gunn had made that scene, the editing would have been way better. Something I really would have liked in that scene, and it's absolutely something James Gunn would do, or Edgar Wright would do, is she's doing all these fist blasts, and she's throwing people against walls. There's all this percussive stuff happening. And something that James Gunn and Edgar Wright do a lot is that they use the background music and they make the fight scene go to the music. Mm-hmm. And it was such a missed opportunity to do that in my mind. The editing,
I can see that.
The editing is just super choppy. And if they had made the editing go to the music and all of her fist blasts be like timed to the beats of the music and people flying through the air and hitting walls, like if that had happened, that would be one of my favorite scenes in the MCU. Like that would be so much fun. And instead they just make it a fight scene with that song in the background instead of like incorporating it into the scene. So that was one of my missed opportunities that I thought would have been would have been a beautiful scene. Another small missed opportunity. And again, this is stuff that I just like watching it. And if I'd looked at their, storyboard, I would have been like, ooh, maybe move this a little bit. And then you get this emotional moment, you know? Mm-hmm. Another one is she's falling and you think she's dead because at this point she can't fly. She falls out of the ship or something. I don't even know what she falls out of. She ejects maybe? I don't remember. Anyway, she's falling. And then her eyes light up. And then they cut and then she flies for about a minute. She just flies around. It would have been way more. And then about a minute later in the movie, she stops that missile.
Yeah.
Here's how I would have cut that. She's falling. Her eyes light up and then you cut away. And then you go to other parts of the action, you know, the dog fights that are going on. And then the missiles are bearing down on the earth. And then Captain Marvel, fully powered up with the ability to fly, steps in the way of the missile. And you haven't seen her fly till that moment. And it would have been like a big, like, I'm here to save the day. Instead, they just had like a minute of her flying around, getting used to flying. And I kind of would have rather her seen that surprise of her would have been cool.
Okay.
But anyway, that's just me, like, you know, Monday morning quarterbacking the movie. But like there was just some things from a directorial standpoint that I felt like slight tweaks would have made scenes more punchy, more powerful, and they didn't make those slight tweaks. But a lot of that is just like, you know, it's a different director. I love stuff like Edgar Wright and James Gunn. That's the kind of stuff I love. I thought it was a strange choice. They start the movie, especially being that it's Marvel's first female hero and they know the target market is going to be very different. In my theater was like 3/4 women when I went to see it. And they start the movie with like a really nerdy sci-fi like genre. There's like it's like just this group of soldiers and they're running around and there's like a space battle and there's all these lasers shooting around. It was like the first 15 minutes of the movie. If you're not into sci-fi stuff, it's very niche to me, that first 15 minutes.
I mean, it's just as niche as, you know, Greek fantasy, which is what Wonder Woman did. I mean,
yeah, but it was Greek fantasy talking about a young girl who wants to be powerful. And so they did the right thing with Wonder Woman, I think. Their target market was to hit this untapped female market and like do something different. And so the first 15 minutes, I was crying in the first 15 minutes of Wonder Woman because I'm watching that little girl desire to be a strong woman one day. And she's watching all these strong women and she's like, she doesn't even see the patriarchy. She is like, no, this is my society and I will be a strong woman, you know, and that's right. Like that meant something to me as a woman. That just meant something to me, as someone, you know.
As weird as I didn't question that. I was just like, neither
would my girlfriend. I say stuff like that all the time to Alyssa, and she's like, "Yep, checks out." That's it. Yeah, no, she, I that meant a lot thinking about the women in my life and young girls watching that movie and seeing that this is a possible path for you to never have that sort of, not let the patriarchy get you down, kind of like you can just dream bigger. You can dream to be outside of the system. And I loved that in Wonder Woman. That was my favorite 15 minutes of that movie.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I kind of feel like you're saying that women don't like science fiction.
No, not saying that all women don't like science fiction. But I'm saying this very specific type of science fiction they were doing in the first 15 minutes of this movie, is more, it is definitely geared more toward men. I just, like, there's no getting around it. I just think it felt like a Star Wars movie, but not in like the epic fantasy way, but in like the Clone Wars way. Like the genre, like it was good. I enjoyed it, but I was just like, if I didn't like science fiction, if I didn't like this type of space battle, that I've grown to love as a big science fiction fan, I would be watching it and going, I'm kind of bored with this. This isn't, it didn't even really have that much character going on in the first few minutes. It was a lot of zappy, laser, which I enjoy, but I don't know. I think it's an undeniable thing that like more boys like that than girls as of right now. That might change.
I don't know what boys or girls like because I don't really like that too much. Like sure. I wasn't that interested in that portion.
Right.
But I hear guys like, "Oh, what do you mean you don't like action?"
Right.
I like some action. I just,
it's not even that it's action versus cerebral or character. It's just that it was a very specific type of like, honestly, it just felt very male. Like it felt like I was watching a Call of Duty cutscene, like Call of Duty Future Fight or something.
Well, I know girls who watch Star Trek and Star Wars and play Call of Duty and all that stuff. So it's just...
Oh, I do too. I'm not saying that girls can't or don't, but I'm saying it is very clear. The numbers are in that it is more common for boys to like those type of movies. And it's partially, I'm not saying that girls can't or that girls are even have less proclivity to, but in our current society, it is the way it is. And it's partially because they are socialized to not like that as much as they're socialized to like character movies or whatever. But like, it is the case that more dudes like Star Wars than girls. It's just true.
All right. I mean, I don't have actual numbers backing anything up. I don't know anything.
Sure.
I know what the stereotype is.
Right. I think it's a stereotype for a reason. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a stereotype for a reason.
Maybe not. I don't know. I can't speak intelligently on it. I don't know. Maybe I just always gravitated more towards female friends. I don't know. I don't have that many male friends who are into it. Like, I have male friends who are into sports, and then I have female friends who are into Star Trek and Star Wars and stuff. So I don't know. Whatever.
Sure. I obviously have people in my life that are that way too. I just think that you just look at the conventions and that's all changing. I think a lot of what I'm talking about is, something that is constantly changing and constantly moving toward, a different world. Where it's less, it's just less that way. I mean, and I think that's good. I think it's probably that for a long time people were socialized to, you literally go down the aisle, there's a boy aisle and a girl aisle in the toy store, and they don't even do that anymore because of the blowback they were getting for it.
Well, they kind of do that, but that's the kind of shit that got Young Justice canceled because they had the ratings, but they didn't want the ratings because the ratings were predominantly female. And that was a sci-fi show, if there is one, a sci-fi superhero show. Bunch of stuff in space going on, alien invasions and shit. Exactly this kind of stuff you're talking about. And, but the viewership was primarily female, and Cartoon Network said, yeah, but females don't buy action figures, so we're going to cancel it. Like, why aren't you putting that shit on purses and stuff if that's what you think is, you know what I mean? Like, like, put it on a dress or whatever you think, the female tees or whatever.
Right.
Like, girls will buy it. Girls will get their parents to buy it. Oh, we don't want that because it's not action figures. You're stupid.
So the only numbers I can find on this issue is I found one paper that breaks down science fiction and fantasy fandom, but that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a very specific thing, a very specific genre of science fiction, which is like science fiction meets Call of Duty. And I think that would be more male, but based on the numbers, apparently 55% male, 44% female is the numbers on science fiction and fantasy readers.
Mm-hmm.
Who read science fiction and fantasy. That's just so it is more male, but that's with fantasy. And just from, again, it's stereotype, sure, but
I've never been real into the idea that, I don't know why sci-fi and fantasy is always lumped together.
Yeah, me neither. It's so different.
A big difference between aliens and dragons.
Yeah.
And, science and magic. Maybe not. Maybe that's what this season of Star Trek Discovery is really trying to drive home. Is there's no difference between sci-fi and fantasy?
This season of Star Trek, this all of Star Trek Discovery, honestly, feels more fantasy than previous Trek to me. I say that there's a lot of one-off episodes of Trek that feel very fantasy, but the crew itself and the ship itself that they're on have always felt very science fiction to me.
Uh-huh.
And they'll encounter sort of fantasy things they don't fully understand, which is, fine. That's also science fiction. But, this show with the Mycelium Network and, I guess mostly the Mycelium Network, it just feels very fantasy to me.
All right. I can see it.
More so than previous Trek anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Elements of Star Trek 5 seems very fantasy to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I guess so.
Anyway.
Yeah. Cool. Well, guys, thanks for hanging out. This was a fun little post-credits, chat about science fiction and gender. This is not what we tried to get into. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. We'll be back next, in a couple days, probably with, more Discovery. Peace.
Live long and prosper.
To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at StarTrekUcast on Twitter, Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for us there, or send us a message at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv. And if you want to hear more from Matthew Carroll, that's me, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, or go listen to my music at MatthewCarrollmusic.com or anywhere you get music.